What's up, everyone? It's Tyler McKinney back here again, and today we're going to continue looking at the XFL. We're going to start a new series. Today we're going to start the series where I'm going to be ranking all of the different players from the different positions, and we're going to be starting with the quarterbacks. If it's your first time here, hey, glad to have you. If you're a return viewer, thanks for coming back and thanks for watching more videos. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. So today we're looking at the quarterbacks, and I'm going to take the top 16 quarterbacks. Pretty much there's 8 teams, each team drafting at least 2 quarterbacks. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go through those 16 quarterbacks, and we're going to work our way from 16 to who I think is the number 1 quarterback. All right, starting things off, we're going to go with Joe Callahan. Now, Joe is a guy who was taken in the 44th round by the Dragons. So Seattle took him in the 4th round. He's a guy who's been around, in the 44th round. He has been around for 4 years, and this guy's been on a lot of different NFL teams. He played his college ball at Wesley, and, I think that he's going to be all right. I think that getting a guy with a lot of NFL experience from a lot of different perspectives, I think is good, and especially if a lot of teams have tried him out. You know that he's got probably the he's definitely got the tools that the NFL is looking for, and I think just he needs an opportunity to get some game experience. Whether or not he'll get that with Seattle is kind of one of those things that's up in the air. But yeah, number 16. I've got Joe Callahan. And before we move on to 15, I do want to make just one thing. One point is that just about every one of these guys has spent some time in the NFL on some NFL practice squad or brought in and signed for some mini camp, rookie camp or something like that. So every one of these guys has dabbled in the NFL a little bit, which is really cool for the XFL, and it says a lot about just how talented the pool of players that they have. So number 15, we've got Terran Christian, and he's a guy from South Dakota State. South Dakota State's had a really good football team. This guy's electrifying. He's fast. He's elusive. He throws a really hard ball, but he can be pretty inaccurate. And he is one of our few rookies here. Now, when I'm looking at it and I'm calling him a rookie, this is why I'm calling him a rookie. It's his first year out of college ball. So if he was playing in the NFL right now, he'd be considered a rookie, so we're calling him a rookie. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Now, he was the 41st pick for LA, and I think that he's going to be a guy. I think he's going to fit right in there at LA. And yeah, I'm really kind of curious to see, how he does there. I think that he's going to end up being the backup to Perez, but he's kind of one of these cool kind of unknown guys on the pro scene. So we'll see if he gets any playing time or anything like that, especially if Luis Perez were to go down. And him get an opportunity. But I think that he ends up in a good place there in LA. All right, let's go ahead and let's move to number 14. Number 14, I have Marquise Williams, and you know him from the good career that he had at North Carolina. And this is a guy who's he's kind of been in the NFL. He was kind of in the CFL for there, in that, and also in the AAF. So he's kind of played in a lot of different professional leagues in that way. This is a guy who's been out of college for 4 years, and I think that he's a guy who's a good fit for New York. I haven't really gone and done my New York video yet, but I think with just the coaching staff of New York, I think he's going to fit right into their systems and so I think that he's definitely a good pick in the 10th round for the New York Guardians. All right, we're going to move on to the number 13th guy that I have on my list, and this is Tyree Jackson from Buffalo. He's, again, another rookie. We've got 4 rookies, and he's our second one on the board here. And this boy is huge. He's 6'7", and he has a big arm, and this boy can sling it. And so for him, playing for the DC Defenders. I think it's perfect, and you can definitely tell where DC's wanting to go. They're wanting to throw that ball down the field. They're wanting to get that ball down the field, and I think he can. I mean, they've got the Tier 1 quarterback is Cardale Jones, and I think he's a perfect complement to back him up with that. And so they took him in the 9th round of the skill position phase of the draft, and so I think that he's going to be a kind of another one of those cool guys. The only thing for me is that he only had 55% passing percentage, completion percentage in college. So I would have liked to seen it a little bit higher. I do know that in Buffalo, he kind of threw it around a little bit there in that, but. I'd like to see him a little bit more accurate, but who knows? We'll see what he does. I mean, he is a rookie, right? All right, let's move on to our number 12 guy, and that's Phillip Nelson. And if you remember watching the AAF, you remember watching him play for San Diego. When the starting quarterback went down in San Diego for the Fleet, he came in and he actually played fairly decent to where I think that for Dallas to pick him up where they did in the 7th round, I think is really good. They got a guy with live game action in, I guess, professional, or if you want to call it professional, semi-pro setting. So to have that as your backup, I think that's really, really solid to have a guy that's had some experience as your backup quarterback. So, and he's a guy who's 3 years out of school to where he's got a little bit on him than most of the other guys. All right, let's go ahead. Let's move to our number 11 guy, and that's Brogan Roback. And he's a guy that got drafted in the 2nd round by the St. Louis Battlehawks. And he's a guy who was with Browns, with Pittsburgh. If you remember, back when he was with the Browns, he was kind of the star of when the Browns had Hard Knocks there with them and during the preseason and all that. So he was kind of the star of the show for that. So if you remember watching Hard Knocks, and you probably remember Brogan Roback. So it's kind of cool for him to continue on with his story, of trying to become, a professional quarterback, and so we'll see what he does here. I think that he landed in a good spot. I think he landed in a city that has a lot of support, and I think a team that's going to be kind of sneaky good, and we'll kind of get to that a little bit later, and I'll kind of tell you why. All right, we're moving into the top 10 now. We've got number 10. I've got the Tampa Bay pick. He was the number 9th pick, Taylor Cornelius out of Oklahoma State. He was a guy that signed with the Packers. He's a rookie. He went undrafted, signed with the Packers. The Packers released him, didn't keep him. But he's a guy threw for almost 4,000 yards and 32 touchdowns last year for Oklahoma State. Now, he only started 1 year at Oklahoma State, but he did fairly well. And when I watched Oklahoma State last year, I was actually pretty impressed. Just with only having 1 year of starting. Now, granted, he had been in their system for a long time. And from what I'm gathering with Tampa Bay, Trestman he's wanting to run a fast-paced type of offense. He brought in a lot of Canadian football guys, and I think that Cornelius is going to fit right into their mold with that. And that's why I've got him here at number 10. And we're going to stay talking about Tampa Bay because we're going to move on to their Tier 1 quarterback, which is Aaron Murray. And so I've got him at number 9. And I really believe that our number 10 quarterback, Taylor Cornelius, could beat out Aaron Murray. Aaron Murray is one of those guys, listen, he's been around for 6 years outside of college. And he's never really been a guy that's kind of really caught on anywhere. And if you remember, he kind of played a little bit in the AAF last year, and he played for Atlanta, and they were not good at all. I mean, whatever you want to say, it was a hot mess, and he didn't do very good either for them. And I'm not going to give him total credit for them not being good because they had a lot of things wrong with that team. I have not seen him outside of his days in Georgia where he has just, shown me any real glimmer of hope for him. And he just seems to be one of these guys that constantly is getting another shot and another chance. And it just seems like when he kind of gets, put, in the fire, it's kind of really shown that for whatever reason, it just doesn't translate to the game situation. And, I don't know to where I could I would not be surprised if Taylor Cornelius was the starter for Tampa Bay and that he take over the spot for Aaron Murray. Maybe not on day one, but after they get a game, 2 in, and it's just not working with Aaron Murray, I could easily see them putting in Taylor Cornelius and it being his team after that. And so that's why I've got those two so close together, and that's why really I have Aaron Murray not even in with the Tier 1 quarterbacks, just because I think the number 8 quarterback is that much better. And so we're going to go with it. And then in the first round, we have Houston took Connor Cook. So he's the number 8 quarterback that I have on my list. He's been out of college for 4 years. And he played okay. He had one game he played for Oakland. He played okay. It wasn't anything great. It was just kind of just middle of the pack, not terrible, not great, just kind of played. And he's kind of been one of those guys that's really bounced around to a different, he's been on practice squads, and he's kind of, the NFL has always seemed to gobble him up. And so for the XFL to pick him up, I think is huge. And you can definitely tell the type of talent that the XFL is dealing with if he's not one of their Tier 1 quarterbacks. So when I look at this, he's my eighth best, and I could actually see him being a day 1 starter. I just don't really, I don't know. I haven't really seen a whole lot out of Phillip Walker to really, know what to expect from him. But I would not be shocked if Connor Cook ended up being a starter here in the XFL. I really don't. All right, let's move on to our number 7 Tier 1 quarterback is Brandon Silvers out of Troy. He was picked by the Seattle Dragons. So Silvers is a guy that has 2 years of experience. So pretty much he's in his second season, and he's kind of one of those guys that when I look at it, he is just resilient. Now, if you remember, he was the 3rd string quarterback for Memphis last year in the AAF, and he rose all the way to the starter. And it was kind of one of those things to where, like, they would have, one guy in, and then they would bring in Silvers, and Silvers would kind of be the starter. Then they kind of brought another guy in, and then he kind of beat out Silvers, but then Silvers beat him back out. It was kind of one of those things to where it's just like you can't keep a good man down. I mean, he just kept firing back, and kept ending up being the starter. And with his resilience in that, and with Zorn as his head coach, I think that he's going to do well there in Seattle, and I think that they're going to be a neat team for that city, and I think that the city's going to rally around him as their quarterback. Let's move on to the number 6 quarterback, and he's a guy that I'm excited about. I'm excited about to see. So he is our 4th and our final rookie. When I look at all of the guys on this list, I think that that's pretty cool that we've got a rookie who is a Tier 1 quarterback. And so I'm excited about him. He's a guy that played at Ole Miss, and if you remember, he got a chance to start last year at Ole Miss, and he was pretty electric and actually ran that offense really, really well, to where I think that he's going to fit in well with this St. Louis team. Like I said before, St. Louis, the city is rallying around this team. And they're excited for having the Battlehawks there, and I think that St. Louis is going to be a sneaky good team. I think that you're going to look up at the end of the day, and they're going to be one of the better teams in the league, and you're going to be kind of like, and kind of a little shocked and a little surprised, by them with it. And I think a big part of it's going to be Jordan Ta'amau. Just from watching his film and stuff, is really, really impressing me. Now, granted, he hasn't played any pro ball with that, so we'll see, where he kind of stands at the end of all of this and that with it. But for them to go through and give him a tier one quarterback label, I think is a big thing, and it's pretty telling about what they think about him and what things they think he's going to do. All right, guys, let's go ahead. We're going to move into our top 5 now. Now we're into our top 5 quarterbacks. And at number 5, I've got Phillip Walker out of Temple. He was picked up by Houston, and listen, he's a guy who's played on the practice squad and been with in Indianapolis there. He's a guy he's in his 3rd year out of college, and I mean, he was a baller at Temple. And, he definitely did some things there. I don't know. I know that he's definitely maybe a better fit in this kind of run and shoot offense than necessarily Connor Cook is. But for some reason, I don't know. I just don't necessarily have a whole lot of experience with him, and I don't know. I just don't have the faith in him maybe that I should have, and I don't know, with him being in Indy, maybe maybe I should give him a little bit more faith. I think Indy's actually done pretty well with figuring out and finding quarterbacks. So with that, but I've got him at number 5, and then at number 4. I have Matt McGloin, and if you know Matt McGloin, you know his story. He was a guy who was a walk-on at Penn State and ended up by the end of his career at Penn State, holding records for the quarterback position there at Penn State. So he's definitely a guy that works hard and has got gotten everything through working hard. He's had the most experience out of all these guys. He's 7 years out of college, which is a little bit on the older side when it comes to things with it. And he's a guy with starting experience in the NFL, which is not a lot we can say for the rest of the guys. There's really only a couple other guys that have started a game in the league in the NFL. So it'll be really interesting to see how he translates into this game and whether or not he can kind of be the elite player. But when I look at him, nothing flies really out at me and hits me, and I don't really get excited about it, especially with this, with it being New York. Now we'll go into kind of the whole New York coaching staff and what I think they're going to run and all that, at a later time. But when I look at it, I think that just kind of pretty much based upon his experience in that, I've got him at number 4. Now we're going into the top 3 here. So these are the top 3 quarterbacks that I think are going to be in the league. And Luis Perez is number 3. And when I look at Luis, he's a guy, if you remember, he was the guy that taught himself how to play football on YouTube. He's a bowler, and the guy is a baller, and I think he's the perfect pick for LA. Why? It has nothing to do with the whether I think that, he's going to fit into the to the scheme, coaching scheme with that. I just think that LA's coach has a chip on his shoulder. Luis Perez has a chip on his shoulder. Winston Moss, the coach, has kind of a swagger to him. Luis Perez has a swagger to him, and I think that the two are going to make a name for themselves together in the XFL. And so when I look at Luis Perez, the guy throws a pretty ball. It's his second year out of college. He played for the Birmingham Iron, and he did okay for the Birmingham Iron, and I think a lot of it really wasn't his fault. I mean, he had some wide receivers dropping passes. They didn't play in a very good offensive scheme. I mean, they won a lot of games because of their defense and how their defense played. So I see what I've seen from him, and in the limited play that he's had in some preseason games, with the Rams and things like that. I'm kind of excited to see what Luis Perez does in that LA system. All right, now we're going to do our number 2 quarterback, and this is probably the guy I'm the most excited about. Why? Because, listen, I'm a Buckeye fan, and I love seeing my Buckeyes, and I love watching the Buckeyes play, and having Cardale Jones in the league playing for the DC Defenders I think is going to be huge. If you watch the preseason this year, you know that he actually played really well for LA, and it was kind of shocking that the Chargers kind of let him go. And he kind of signed to a couple different practice squads, but for the XFL to pick him up is huge. And I think that he's going to be a star in the league. I think that when you look at it at the end of the season, I think he's probably going to be scooped up by some NFL team. I think that he's that good. And the reality of it is he's a guy who's been drafted. He's kind of, it's his 4th year out. He kind of already knows what's going on, and I think he's going to acclimate to the game really well, and I think that he's going to do well for himself here in the XFL, and that's going to translate and get him back on an active roster in the NFL. That's just kind of what I think. And then that brings me to my number 1 quarterback, and it's Landry Jones. And listen, the whole reason why is because he's the first guy that they signed. He's the first Tier 1 quarterback, the first guy we heard about, and He's got Coach Bob Stoops there. He's a guy who, he's kind of been around the league. He's got 6 years worth of experience. He started, he started some games for Pittsburgh, especially when Big Ben was down. And listen, Coach Stoops is getting the old band all back together, and that's pretty much why they're picked to win the championship by a lot of people. He knows the system. Landry Jones knows the system and where he's going to be. He knows the coach. They've got a lot of guys around them that they all kind of know this style of football, what they're planning on running. I think they're going to be electrifying, and I think it's going to be fun. And I really think that they're going to make a splash in the XFL. Do I think that they're going to win the championship just yet? I don't know, but I definitely think that they're going to be a good team in the league. And Landry Jones is just part of that. And so for him to be Dallas's first tier 1 pick, and for him to go and be there with his old coach, I think that's pretty good. All right, guys, so that's it. There's my rankings of the quarterbacks. I hope you liked it, and maybe there's some that I did that maybe you might not have liked, or maybe you thought that I should have done differently. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section. Let me know what your rankings are, and let's have that discussion, and let's talk about it back and forth, because I love doing that with you guys. All right, well, I know that you're busy and know that I'm busy, so let's get on out of here. You have a good night. Bye.